Revenge films.
I married my boyfriend from college, and we moved in with my in-laws. My mother-in-law was terrible at cooking. How bad, you might ask? It was so terrible that my husband, who was still my boyfriend at the time, cried when he had the omelet I made for the first time. He took one bite and started crying tears of joy for its tastiness. He said he had never dreamt of having delicious omelets at home. All the good experiences in the past were from restaurants or store-bought frozen food. But because I've never heard any of my friends complain about their parents' cooking, my husband's reaction at the time was a little hilarious. I thought he was exaggerating. The day I met my in-laws, I finally experienced firsthand my mother-in-law's cooking. There was a stew with no fish in it, but smelled fishy. A stir-fry with suspicious seasoning that was somewhat sweet and spicy with a hint of sourness. The dinner was so awful that I couldn't help but scream in my heart. He was right, this is very bad indeed. Because my mother-in-law was being very kind to me at the time, I didn't say anything about the food. After I started to live with my mother-in-law, her attitude changed 180 degrees. I wondered where her nice personality went. She kept telling me things like, season the food this way, and prepare the ingredient like this. The way she cooks food was self-taught. The more I looked at it, the more I understood why her cooking was so terrible. Even when I tried to use cookie cutters to cut carrots into different shapes, she would say, "Don't be lazy, use a knife." She kept on roasting my cooking, but every time she ate my food, she would then say, "Not too bad." Even she didn't realize that it had become her routine to complain as much as she could, and then stuff her face with the food I made. My husband and father-in-law defended me at first, but soon they decided it was funnier to see my mother-in-law's reactions when I had different opinions on cooking. They started to agitate her intentionally by saying,
"I want to have Yannet stew tomorrow." "Yeah, stew sounds great to me."
That wasn't funny at all to my mother-in-law. But she didn't realize that she didn't even have a chance to cook because she was too busy complaining about my cooking. I asked my father-in-law if he ever thought something was wrong with my mother-in-law's cooking. He had been eating her food for a long time after all. He said he didn't bother to say anything because her food came out the same way every time. That's why he had been eating the same terrible food for all these years without complaining. I felt a little sorry for him. I also understand why my husband cried when he tried my food for the first time. I started making a variety of delicious dishes. My father-in-law was happy to have great food at home. Before his 60th birthday, he discovered his new favorite food, Tom Yum soup and salad rolls. One day, my mother-in-law was cooking. I tried a little and I was shocked. "Whoa, why is it so sour? What's in it?" My mother-in-law replied, "It's vinegar. Don't you know vinegar is good for your health?" And she showed me an empty vinegar bottle. My mother-in-law bought the vinegar earlier that day, but it was all used in one dish. No wonder the food was super sour. That's not all. She always puts too much sugar in the food and almost never properly washes and cleans the ingredients before cooking. Vinegar is indeed healthy, but it seems like she had no idea how to balance flavor elements. Also, my mother-in-law never prepares meat with salt and pepper or cleans out sand out of the clams. So whenever she buys animal organs or fish with a strong smell, such as mackerel, there would be a lingering stench at the dinner table that day. Everything is fully cooked, but everything tastes plain awful. Another day, I bought a fresh mackerel to make simmered fish. I went through all the basic preparation steps, cleaned the guts, and got rid of the smell. After trying the finished dish, my mother-in-law suspected it was ready-made from a store or a restaurant. So I showed her the raw fish packaging. All she could only say was, "Oh, so you did make this." Then she became quiet. Both my husband and father-in-law were surprised that a simmered mackerel could be so tasty and free of any fishy smell. Usually, my mother-in-law would probably just dump the chopped fish into the pan and add some sauce. My husband and father-in-law praised my simmered mackerel. My father-in-law went overboard and said to my mother-in-law,
"Why don't you learn how to cook from Yannet?"
She got infuriated. Later, my mother-in-law complained to my sister-in-law. My sister-in-law came unannounced and started yelling at me. "How dare you bully my mom? I heard she's upset because of you." Despite how shocked I was, I tried to explain everything to her, but she didn't want to listen to me at all. "I learned cooking from my mom and I don't think it's bad at all." She kept shouting without even listening to me. So I said, "Maybe you can make dinner for us tonight and then we'll know how good you are." I thought it was better to let the facts speak for themselves, but I didn't expect her cooking to be so shockingly bad. She made a bland soup with raw onions, some burnt grilled fish with vinegar on top, and a pasta salad soaked in vinegar and oil. My mother-in-law looked very awkward. My husband and father-in-law looked like they were about to puke, but my sister-in-law was clearly very proud of her dishes. So they said to her,
If you think it tastes good, you should try it yourself.
"You are doubting me too?" After she took a bite, she immediately ran to the bathroom while covering her mouth. Can you imagine what it feels like to bite into a burnt fish that's raw on the inside, topped with a sour vinegar sauce? Even though my sister-in-law couldn't eat her own food, she didn't stop arguing with me. My husband had to call her husband to come get her. My sister-in-law's husband arrived in no time. My husband said to him,
Seems like life is hard for you too.
made a sad face and replied,
Yeah, it is.
At the same time, my sister-in-law didn't stop defending herself. No, that's not what I wanted to make. So my husband asked if I could make the same dishes for everyone, including my sister-in-law and her husband. After I served the dishes, my sister-in-law's husband cried tears of joy, just like my husband once did. He said,
So good? How could this be so good?
My sister-in-law also seemed to like the dishes, but she still insisted she wasn't wrong. I can make this too. Her husband said to her,
To be honest, you really shouldn't compare these dishes to yours.
She couldn't say anything, so she just left with an angry look. I didn't mind teaching my sister-in-law how to cook because she only learned the wrong way from her mother. But with her hostile attitude, there was no way I would do that. Thanks to this incident, my mother-in-law finally realized that her cooking was terrible. But my sister-in-law still refused to admit that her cooking was bad, even after her husband said,
Your cooking is destructively bad. I've been forcing myself to swallow everything and not say a word to you. I can't do that anymore. Please, go to your sister-in-law and ask her to teach you how to cook.
She still didn't cave in. My mother-in-law started to urge my sister-in-law to improve her cooking skills. I often heard her saying to my sister-in-law on the phone, I feel bad for your husband. Hurry and ask your sister-in-law nicely to teach you how to cook. My mother-in-law, who used to complain about my cooking, is now learning from me. If my preferred way is different from hers, she would say, Shouldn't you do this instead of? And my husband and father-in-law would always remind her.
Why don't you just listen to her? There's a lot you need to learn.
Then my mother-in-law would stop questioning and ask me to teach her more. Also, she started to brag to the neighbors. My daughter-in-law is a genius cook! I'm amazed by how drastically her attitude changed compared to when I first moved in. I'm not a genius cook, by the way. I don't design new dishes or make my own recipes. I have to constantly look at the recipe book when I'm trying to make something new. If I'm feeling lazy, I'll serve ready-made food too. But because my mother-in-law bragged about me to her neighbors, the neighbors would say to me, Oh, hello, genius home cook. I heard a lot about you from your mother-in-law. My mother-in-law's bragging somehow raised the bar, so I had to adjust accordingly. My husband is now always telling me how happy he is to have married me. My father-in-law also says he's grateful that I moved into their home. Now he can have delicious meals every day. My mother-in-law was mean to me at first, but now she's trying her best to learn cooking from me. Oh well, I'm glad everything finally worked out.
How was today's video? If you enjoyed it, please subscribe, like, and leave a comment. Stay tuned for more.